Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: the United States vows ironclad support for Israel as fears grow of an imminent Iranian attack. Our other headlines: as more aid tries to enter Gaza, another attack on a relief agency. UNICEF says its convoy came under Israeli fire. Kyiv says Russian strikes have been taking out its power networks and says it needs more weapons to defend Ukraine's skies. And as Europe slows down on the road to electric, can Chinese EVs supercharge a stalling Italian market? US President Joe Biden has vowed ironclad support for Israel amid heightened fears that Iran will retaliate for the strike on its embassy in Syria earlier this month. Tehran is vowing revenge after an Iranian general and 6 military personnel were killed in the blast in Damascus 10 days ago. Russia has urged countries in the Middle East to show restraint and warned against travelling to the region, while Germany's national carrier Lufthansa has extended a suspension of flights to Iran's capital. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Alex Cadier, who's in Tel Aviv. Alex, what's the picture where you are, given these threats from Iran?
Well, certainly Israelis across the country bracing for that retaliation. We've spoken to people here in Tel Aviv, further down south in Sderot and other places, and they are very aware that that escalation could come at any minute. Everybody knows roughly where their closest bomb shelter is at any moment. That is the sense. But it's also a bit of business as usual, because that threat is not something Israelis are particularly new to, and they understand that this is just part of daily life when these threats are happening, these war of words between the Supreme Leader, who vowed revenge against Israel, and Israeli ministers. Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, saying that a powerful response would come from Israel if Iran targets Israeli targets directly from Iran. We've heard that from Israel Katz, the foreign minister, as well. Now, behind the scenes, we understand that the US has put a pretty serious diplomatic effort against this escalation, asking the foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar and Iraq to speak to their Iranian counterpart. They have all spoken to the Iranian foreign minister, urging against escalation. And what we're hearing in Israeli media is that the target, again, this is not confirmed, could be in the Golan Heights, in the northeastern part of Israel, not a densely populated area and not an area with particularly high-value military targets. Now, if that were to be the case, you can imagine a scenario where Israel is limited in its response, preventing that further escalation. But again, like the rest of the country, we'll have to wait and see. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and how, Jamie.
Alex, we're hearing Prime Minister Netanyahu and his senior commanders were not consulted over this strike, which killed 3 sons of Hamas leader Hania.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The defense minister wasn't consulted, senior commanders weren't consulted, neither was the prime minister. The Israeli Defense Forces and Shin Bet, the security agency, engaged in this operation because it was of a tactical nature. That is the explanation you're getting from the Israeli Defense Forces. That would imply that a decision was made at ground level. Now, that tracks with what the IDF and Shin Bet said with regards to this operation, that the 3 sons of Ismail Haniyeh were on their way to conduct terror activity in central Gaza. We have no details of exactly what that activity would have been or could have been. We also have no comment from the Israeli Defense Forces on the 4 grandchildren of Ismail Haniyeh also killed in this strike. So clearly this seems to have been a decision taken in the moment. At least that is the version of events put forward by the Israeli Defense Forces, the Israeli security establishment. On the other hand, we have the response from Ismail Haniyeh, the political leader of Hamas, who said he is very clear that Israel would be delusional if it thought that this strike targeting his sons would in any way change Hamas's position in the ongoing ceasefire negotiations. Jamie, if anything, it's hardened Hamas's position.
Alex, thank you for that. Our correspondent, Alex Cadier in Tel Aviv. And just to reiterate what Alex was saying there, Hamas says the killing of its political chief's sons and grandchildren will not change the group's position in the ceasefire talks with Israel. Hania stressed that Palestinian leaders will not back down if their families and homes are targeted. He said Hamas would not withdraw its demands, which includes a permanent ceasefire and the return of displaced Palestinians. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent Akram Al-Satari in Rafah. Akram, is the killing of Hania's sons and grandchildren likely to complicate what already looked like very strained ceasefire talks?
Well, the key question, can it be further complicated? The situation is dire. The negotiations are just ongoing and nothing has been achieved as yet. The American administration has been making some statements saying it's Hamas, it's up to Hamas now to provide answers. Israel have been speaking repeatedly about opening borders, allowing to the negotiation to achieve something, but nothing has achieved yet. 6 continuous months of devastation and killing. And Hania said something very important about his family. He said that his family lost around 60 family members, the latest of which were his 3 sons and two granddaughters. But the family has already been paying a very heavy price, and he said that is not going to deter or stop them, and that it is not going to have an effect on the ongoing negotiation. Hamas as a movement has been negotiating over things. They have lost also military leaders in Gaza North. They have lost military leaders in Gaza Central area, and they seem to be focusing on what they want to achieve. They have been seen not to be willing to compromise the demands that have been made, and they have been also willing to continue those negotiations and not stop them, because they think, as they have said, it's a bigger interest for the Palestinian public in Gaza to bring about a ceasefire and the release of the Palestinian prisoners. So they think they are sacrificing their soldiers and the sons and daughters of their leaders for the sake of the greater good for the Palestinian people.
And Akram, another humanitarian convoy has been attacked.
Yes, absolutely. The UNICEF convoy, a coordinated convoy that was heading from the Gaza South to the Gaza North, 3 vehicles, I think more than 3 vehicles. They were carrying fuel, they were carrying nutritional materials, they were carrying medical supplies for Kamal Udwan Hospital. The Israeli side was very well aware of the coordinates and the path of that convoy. They were reaching what was called a holding point. A holding point is a point where the UNRWA vehicles just park and wait for the Israeli checkpoint that is ahead of them to ask them to proceed. There was a fire that is coming from the Israeli checkpoint. They escaped from nearby the trucks. Those trucks, one of them was affected by that, and they luckily survived that lethal incident. This is something that happened at Wadi Gaza area. Wadi Gaza is an area that has been witnessing a very fierce fire exchange and bombardment since last night. And Nusayrat, that is also nearby the area, was also a scene or an area that has witnessed fire exchange and bombardment and artillery fire and all of that. The UNRWA and the UNICEF confirmed that they have been coordinating with the Israeli side for the entry of those convoys, and that they ended up being shot at, and they miraculously, the staff that were there miraculously survived that incident.
Akram, thank you for that. Our correspondent Akram Al-Satari in Rafah. South Korea's opposition has won a landslide victory in parliamentary elections in a blow to the president, Yoon Suk-yeol. The Democratic Party gained the most seats, and the party's leader said economic recovery was his top priority. President Yoon has been facing growing criticism over a cost of living crisis and a spate of political scandals. The Vietnamese real estate tycoon has been sentenced to death for her role in a multi-billion-dollar financial fraud case, the country's largest. Truong My Lan was found guilty of embezzlement, bribery and violating banking regulations following a month-long trial. It's part of a corruption crackdown by the ruling Communist Party that has ensnared senior state officials and business leaders. Lawmakers in Poland are debating whether to liberalize strict abortion laws. The country introduced a near-total ban in 2021. But opening up access was a key campaign promise of the newly elected Prime Minister Donald Tusk. This issue is likely to divide Parliament with differing views among members of the ruling coalition. Russia has successfully launched a new space rocket after technical problems led to the last two attempts being aborted at the last moment. The Angara A5 rocket is designed to carry tons of equipment into space, and Russia claims it's more environmentally friendly than Soviet models. The mission showcases Moscow's ambitions to be a major space power. China's top legislator is visiting the DPRK. It's the highest level visit from a Chinese official to Pyongyang in 5 years. Beijing says his visit marks the beginning of a friendship year, marking 75 years of diplomatic ties. Our correspondent Zhang Qing reports now from Pyongyang.
China's top legislator Zhao Leji leads a Chinese national delegation to Pyongyang on Thursday. The delegation will attend the opening ceremony of China and the DPRK Friendship Year. Chinese art delegation has already arrived in Pyongyang. Nearly 300 Chinese artists are here for the cultural activities that will mark the opening ceremony. They were invited to be a banquet at the Godao International Hotel on Thursday night. Wang Yajun, Chinese ambassador to the DPRK, attended the banquet. Wang said Zhao's visit would be a major stride toward implementing the important concerns reached by the two sides. He believes the visit would be play key role in promoting the China and DPRK Friendship Year. Zhao's visit is China's highest level diplomatic outreach to the DPRK after pandemic. The visit will last till April 13. CMG reporter Zhang Qing in Pyongyang.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, Russia targets energy facilities across Ukraine. Zelensky says it shows how critical air defense has become.
Welcome to This Way Forward.
What do we mean when we talk about the difference?
Brazen axe.
The difference is in the detail, the background,
Defense ministers from
the wider angle and perspective of every story. Wherever the story may be. CGTN. See the difference.
This week on Razor, how saving one species can save an ecosystem. On the trail of European bison.
We have here, as you can see, a nice trail through thick vegetation here, which is done by the bison. It's one of the roads they have in nature. They basically create these pathways through thick vegetation where other smaller animals can't cross.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. The United States vows ironclad support for Israel as fears grow of an imminent Iranian attack. Our other headlines, as more aid tries to enter Gaza, another attack on a relief agency. UNICEF says its convoy came under Israeli fire. Ukraine says Russia's latest aerial assault has destroyed a large electricity plant near Kyiv and struck other parts of the country's energy infrastructure, sparking fears about the resilience of Kyiv's power network. President Volodymyr Zelensky says the attacks show how critical air defense has become and appealed once again for more international support. The Ukrainian leader is in Lithuania, where he's expected to sign a security agreement. Let's talk to our correspondent Megumi Lim, who's in Kyiv. Megumi, what more can you tell us about these attacks?
That's right. Russia launched another massive missile and drone attack against Ukraine overnight, targeting regions all across the country. And according to Ukraine's Air Force, its air defense systems shot down 57 out of the more than 80 drones and missiles launched by Russia overnight. But the damage from last night's attacks is enormous in the Kharkiv region. According to the regional governor, the region was struck at least 10 times overnight. And as a result, more than 200,000 households and electricity subscribers are now without electricity. And in the Kyiv region, where the air raid alert lasted for about 5 hours, the regional governor said that there were reports of drone strikes causing fire at a critical infrastructure facility. And we've also been seeing reports from several of Ukraine's energy companies reporting on the damage that's been inflicted on their facilities. For example, according to Centrenergo, which is Ukraine's state energy company, it said that its Tripilia thermal power plant in the Kyiv region was destroyed as a result of the overnight attacks. This power plant is the main electricity supplier for the Kyiv region, Zhytomyr and Cherkasy regions, and the overnight attack led to 100% destruction of the company's power generating capacity. Now, DTEK, which is Ukraine's largest private power company, said that 2 of its thermal power plants were damaged as a result of the attacks. And DTEK's facilities have already been coming under massive attacks over the past few weeks, where the company said that over 80% of its power generating capacity had already been damaged or destroyed. And Naftogaz, which is Ukraine's state-owned oil and gas company, said that the overnight attack targeted 2 of its underground gas storage facilities. And in the far western Lviv region, the regional governor said that 2 energy sites, including a gas distribution facility and a substation, came under attack, and the list goes on. So it is very clear that Russia is indeed stepping up its attacks against Ukraine's energy infrastructure, and the damage and destruction caused by last night's attacks are huge. And we are seeing more and more gaps in Ukraine's air defense systems as additional military aid from the United States continues to stall. And we're seeing Russian forces using this opening to target Ukraine's energy infrastructure, as they did in the winter months of 2022 to 2023.
President Zelensky is in Lithuania. What are his plans?
That's right. President Zelensky is meeting with Central and Eastern European leaders as he's attending the 3C summit in Lithuania. He's trying to shore up more desperately needed support for Ukraine as the war continues on. As I mentioned earlier, Russia has stepped up its missile and drone attacks against Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Now, the attendees of this 3C summit include presidents of Estonia, Poland, Latvia, Romania, the Czech Republic, and President Zelensky has been working tirelessly to try to get more air defense systems, badly needed air defense systems, to Ukraine, and this will be another opportunity for him to try to convince leaders to get those air defense systems to Ukraine. But also what is expected is that he's expected to discuss Ukraine's aspirations for NATO, future NATO membership as well. Ukraine has been ramping up its domestic production of weapons, not only to try to reduce its reliance on foreign weapons deliveries, but to raise its military standards to NATO standards. And also, so far, what's come out of the summit is that President Zelensky has signed a 10-year bilateral security agreement with his Latvian counterpart. And Latvia has said that its annual military support for Ukraine will come up to about 0.25% of its GDP. And it's made a commitment to help Ukraine with its cyber defense, demining, unmanned technologies, and also it's said that it will support Ukraine's EU and NATO accession. And so far, countries like Germany, the UK, France, Denmark, Italy, the Netherlands, and Finland have all signed this bilateral security agreement with Ukraine. But Zelensky is trying to get more countries to sign this agreement with his country.
Megumi, thank you for that. Our correspondent Megumi Lim in Kyiv. Well, let's get the reaction from Russia now, and our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova, who's in Moscow for us. Dasha, what has Russia said about these attacks on energy infrastructure?
Well, we have the confirmation from the Russian Ministry of Defense that the Russian army had carried out the massive strike against the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. Moscow says that was carried out with the high-precision long-range weapons, and it was the retaliation for the Ukrainian attacks against Russian oil refineries and the energy infrastructure of Russia. The Russians have always been saying that they will not leave these attacks unanswered, also suggesting that Ukraine is carrying out those attacks against the oil refineries inside Russia as part of its plan, because it is losing on the battlefield, according to the Russian officials. So that's why they have to somehow make up for what Russia describes as Ukraine's Western curator. So this attack has indeed been confirmed in Moscow. In the meantime, the officials here also saying that they are seeing the conference that is expected to be held in Switzerland on Ukraine as meaningless without Russia's participation.
Russia has been battling record flooding. What's the latest we have on that?
Well, the flooding is ongoing. It is a disaster for the people who live in the areas that are in the risk of flooding and that have already been flooded. In Orenburg, water levels continue to rise. They are expected to peak later on Thursday or on Friday. The local officials there are also urging people to be evacuated from the areas that are in the high risk. They are also saying that the two Il-76 of the Russian Ministry of Defense have delivered 90 tons of humanitarian aid to the areas that have been badly hit by those floods, but water has started to recede from the flooded territories in the Orsk area. This is inside the Orenburg region, and the special commission has been set up to evaluate and to assess the damage made by those floods to the region. The assessment, according to the local governor, is $40 million, 41 billion Russian rubles. So the reconstruction effort will start immediately after the weather conditions allow for that. But certainly there are many concerns among the population that they will not be receiving enough help, because what they have lost was their livelihood. In the meantime, the level of water is increasing in other rivers, in Tobol and Ishmael, and it is in Kurgan region where the big water, as it is called by the Emergencies Ministry, is expected to come next. And they are beefing up the dam there, strengthening it with the piles of sand, and also urging on the residents to be evacuated from the areas that are expected to be hit.
Dasha, thank you for that. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. China's Commerce Minister is set to meet Italy's Deputy Prime Minister in Venice. It's the latest stop on Wang Wantao's European tour, which comes at a time of tension between the EU and China. Beijing has launched an anti-dumping investigation into European-produced cognac, which Wantao was forced to defend in Paris earlier this week. He told his French counterpart the investigation is not linked to an EU investigation into China's electric vehicle market. Well, Europe's affection for going electric seems to be waning somewhat, but the popularity of Chinese electric vehicles is causing some concern among European lawmakers. The EU investigation into EVs is looking at whether Chinese manufacturers are benefiting from unfair subsidies. Our correspondent Giles Gibson looks at how Chinese brands could affect the Italian car market.
It's home to some of the most iconic car brands on the planet, but the electric vehicle market in Italy is still in its infancy. EV sales are way behind other European countries with much smaller populations, such as Portugal or Belgium. Plinio Vanini from Gruppo Auto Torino, which has more than 70 car dealerships across Italy, says his customers worry about two things in particular.
Battery life is one of the main things. The second issue is charging infrastructure. The country's not ready yet, or it's not really adequate. Especially in cities, there are a number of complex issues. For example, the installation of charging boxes in apartment buildings, and therefore it's going to take a long time.
Elon Musk's Tesla dominated the Italian market last year, with its models Y and 3 both outselling the electric version of Fiat's iconic Cinquecento or 500. Like in other parts of the world, EVs here are marketed as perfect for short journeys in busy cities. Two-seater electric vehicles like this one are becoming an increasingly common sight on the streets of the Italian capital, but their popularity could be down to something other than their green credentials. They're very small, so you can squeeze them into tiny parking spaces, and they're also exempt from strict traffic control measures in Rome's city centre. Chinese brands JQ and Omoda are set to launch in Italy this year, but they're doing so at a tricky time. Last October, the European Commission launched an investigation into whether Chinese EV companies benefit from illegal state subsidies.
This investigation will determine whether battery electric vehicle value chains in China benefit from illegal subsidization, and whether this subsidization causes or threatens to cause economic injury to EU producers of battery electric vehicles.
The Chinese government has described the investigation, which is still ongoing, as, quote, protectionist. As governments wait for the outcome, they're also trying to attract Chinese automakers to start building their cars in the EU. But after reports linking China's BYD to Italy, the company is now on the brink of building a factory in Spain instead. Giles Gibson for CGTN, Rome.
The headlines again as more aid tries to enter Gaza. Another attack on a relief agency. UNICEF says its convoy came under Israeli fire. Our other headlines: the United States vows ironclad support for Israel as fears grow of an imminent Iranian attack. And Kyiv says Russian strikes have been targeting its power networks. Zelensky calls for more weapons to defend Ukraine's skies. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel, on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
Hello and welcome to the weather forecast. I'm Tierney. Well, over to Europe. A big low-pressure system will continue to dump quite an amount of precipitation for the northern half of the continent over the next couple of days. For instance, here for Friday, there could see quite a lot of showers, as well as the mix of rain and snow, and the heavy intensity of wintry precipitation setting the stage here for some scattered locations, particularly for the higher elevations here up in the north. Well, Saturday we'll see no big changes of the wet weather forecast. Here for the majority of the west as well as the central portions of the continent, we'll see quite a lot of cloudy to clear conditions over the next 3 days possibly. And under this weather pattern, and temperature will remain rather cool or even cold here for many portions here up in the north. Most of the high temperatures will be just in the single digits or even dipping down into the negative readings as we head into Saturday. However, here for the southern half of the continent, we'll see much warmer high temperatures. Most of them will be in the upper 20s, and several of them will be probably climbing up into the 30s over this weekend. So please dress up accordingly and enjoy the warm weather while it lasts. And about business and travel. In Paris, we'll see some overcast conditions with a high of 25 and low about 11 degrees Celsius on Saturday. Even warmer here for Madrid with a high of 28, along with abundant sunshine as well. But notice that the temperature's difference between the high and lows will be rather big, even above 20 degrees Celsius. So please put on an extra layer during the morning and evening hours.